Hi everyone, this is lesson 40. Today we are going to look at a few more events from the life and ministry of Jesus. We are going to be looking at three of the miracles that he performed: the great catch of fish, healing the centurion's servant, and calming the storm. We are on page 149 in the workbook. Let's read the introduction. Through his miracles, Jesus showed himself to be true God, the Savior that was promised, the Savior that we need. For those around him, the miracles drew attention to his word, and we too should listen to Jesus. So let's do that. Let's listen to Jesus, beginning with the Gospel of Luke, chapter 5, verses 1 through 11, where Jesus calls his disciples with an amazing catch of fish. So we'll see here how Jesus uses a miracle to formally call Peter, James, and John. They've been following him, listening to him for a while, but now he formally calls them to follow him, to be his full-time disciples. Please pause the video at this point and read Luke 5, 1 through 11. All right, let's go to the questions. Number 1, why was there such a huge crowd around Jesus? So why was there such a huge crowd pressing around Jesus so that he has to basically get on a boat just to escape the press of the crowd? Well, a whole lot of people had by now heard about the things that Jesus was saying and doing. Jesus had been traveling from town to town, village to village, proclaiming the good news of salvation, healing all sorts of diseases, and more people are hearing about this, and they want to come and hear and see Jesus for themselves. Number 2, what did Jesus do so that the people could hear him better? So it would have been, hard in the middle of a huge crowd to be able to speak so that they could hear him. So Jesus gets in a boat, and it's Peter's boat, and asks Peter to put off a little ways from shore so that he can be seen by all of them as they're sitting on the seashore, so that he can project and allow them to hear what he's saying. Number 3, after he had finished teaching the people, Jesus asked the disciples to put down their nets to catch some fish. Peter wasn't sure that it was worth the effort. Why not? So Jesus tells them to put their nets down, but Peter thinks, it's probably not worth it because they had been working all night already. They hadn't caught a thing. What difference is it going to make now to put our nets down? But number 4, though they doubted, what did the disciples do? So Peter and probably the others, they thought this is going to be a waste of time, And yet, because Jesus told them to do it, they listened to him and they did what he said. Number 5, describe what happened next. What happened next? Uh, there, there were so many fish in their nets, it started weighing down the one boat, and they have to call the other boat over. They literally caught 2 whole boatloads of fish, an amazing miracle that Jesus performs here. This was not just an ordinary catch of fish, this was miraculous. Number 6, why do you think that Peter asked Jesus to go away from him all of a sudden? So Peter has this sudden realization when he sees this miracle taking place right in front of his eyes. He suddenly realizes that here he is, a sinful human being, standing in the presence of the holy, powerful God. He is overcome with this sudden sense of awe and reverence and fear, and his reaction is to say, "Go away from me. I'm not even worthy to be in your presence, Jesus." Number 7, why could Jesus tell them not to be afraid? Jesus told them not to be afraid because he hadn't come to punish them for their sins, to condemn them. He had come to take their sins away. They didn't have to be afraid to be in his presence. Number 8, what career change did Jesus give to Peter, James, and John? What career change did they receive here? Instead of catching fish with nets, they would be going out to catch, in a sense, people with the gospel message. They are going to be bringing people into the Christian church through the sharing of the good news of Jesus. All right, the next section that we're going to look at, Matthew chapter 8, verses 5 through 13, where Jesus heals a centurion's servant. We're going to see here how a Roman centurion trusted that Jesus had the power to heal his sick servant, and Jesus showed that the faith of the centurion was not misplaced. So let's read about that. Please pause the video, read Matthew 8, 5 through 13. Okay, let's look at the questions. Number 9. A centurion was a Roman soldier who had over 100 men under his command, a high-ranking Roman soldier. It would have been uncommon to find such a person who believed in the promises of God. But what do the centurion's actions tell us about him? What do the centurion's actions tell us? Well, obviously, this high-ranking Roman soldier, the centurion, had somehow heard about Jesus. and had come to faith, basically, is showing his faith here, his trust in the fact that Jesus could help him, that Jesus could heal his servant, who obviously he cared for quite a bit. Number 10, Jesus was willing to go to help the man's servant, but how did the centurion demonstrate his complete trust in Jesus' power? So Jesus says, "Okay, I'm willing to help. Let's go to your house. Show me where your servant is. I'll go and heal him." And the centurion says, "No, Jesus, you don't even have to do that. You don't have to come to my house. You don't need to be in the presence of my servant. Um, you can just say the word, just give the order, and I know that the illness will obey your word, your order, and leave him." This is amazing faith. This is a military man, a soldier, a centurion. He's used to just giving orders, and his subordinates obeyed. Here he says, "Jesus, you can just give the order, and I know that disease is subordinate to you, is under you, has to obey. So just give the order, and disease will obey, and he will be healed just like that." Pretty amazing faith that this centurion has. Number 11, Jesus turned to the crowd and said something that sounded similar to what he had said to the people in Nazareth in our last lesson. In your own words, summarize what he said in verses 11 and 12. So Jesus turns, and what does he say to the crowds? He says, "Many Jews are going to reject me, but look, many Gentiles, like this centurion, a non-Jew, many Gentiles would believe in him." So here again, we see the fact that Jesus has come as the Savior of the world, both Jews and Gentiles. Number 12, how did Jesus demonstrate his power here as true God? How do we see Jesus' power as true God? Jesus had exactly the power that the centurion thought that he had. He was able to heal this servant just by saying the word from a distance. This is amazing, unlimited power that Jesus is demonstrating here. He gives the command from a distance, and disease itself obeys him and leaves the servant. All right, our final section then today, Matthew chapter 8, verses 23 through 27, where Jesus calms the storm. While Jesus' disciples were out on the Sea of Galilee, a storm developed, which made them fear for their lives. But with a word, Jesus stopped the storm and calmed the sea. Let's pause and read Matthew 8, 23 through 27. All right, questions. Number 13. Jesus had had a very busy day teaching and healing people. We read about part of that day with Jesus healing the centurion's servant. You can read the rest if you'd like. When Jesus got into the boat, he fell fast asleep. How does this show that Jesus was not only true God, but also true man? So here we see that Jesus is very human. As a human being, he got tired after a long day of work, just like any of us would. You work all day and you feel tired at night. Maybe you jump into bed and fall right asleep. Jesus is a very real human being. Number 14, a storm arose. Most of Jesus' disciples were seasoned fishermen. They knew how to handle boats out on the sea. By their words in verse 25, how severe must this storm have been? How severe was this storm? Obviously, this was not an ordinary storm. These professional fishermen, they would have seen plenty of storms before. But this must have been a huge one, a terrifying storm. They were sure that they were going to die. And if a storm is big enough to scare professional, seasoned fishermen, it's a big, big storm. Number 15, Jesus helped his disciples. How did this show that Jesus was not only true man, but also true God as well? How do we see here that Jesus is true God? Well, as true God, he had the power to control the forces of nature with his word. So we saw in the last section that Jesus' word has power over sickness and disease. We see here that Jesus' word has power over wind and waves. He says the word, be quiet, be still, and the storm listens to him. The storm obeys him. That's power. Number 16, how did Jesus' disciples react to this miracle? How did Jesus' disciples react? They were amazed, right? They again have this sudden realization that they are in the presence of God. Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him. Well, they knew who this was. This is God. Number 17, why did Jesus say that his disciples had little faith? Why did Jesus say his disciples had little faith? Well, because they were afraid of this storm. They didn't trust that Jesus, who was there with them, even though he was sleeping, they didn't trust that Jesus would take care of them, that he wasn't able to take care of them, or that he wasn't aware of what was happening, whatever the reason might be. They didn't trust Jesus. 18. What promises of God can we trust, even when the storms of our lives, maybe not literal storms, but we all go through difficult, scary, terrifying things sometimes. What promises of God can we trust, even when the storms of our lives threaten to overwhelm us? What promises of God can we trust? Even during the darkest, scariest storms, we can be absolutely sure that Jesus is our powerful Savior who loves us, who promises to care for us. Maybe sometimes it seems like Jesus is far away, that he's sleeping, that he's not paying attention to what is going on in our lives. But we can be absolutely sure, no matter how things might seem, that he is powerful, that he is loving, and that he will absolutely take care of us no matter what. Key questions. A, what did Jesus' miracles show us about who he is? Well, we see very clearly here that Jesus is not just a man. He is a man. He gets tired and falls asleep and so on. He does very human things, but not just a man. He is also true God with power over disease and sickness and wind and wave and everything else. B, Jesus performed miracles to draw attention to what he said because his message was so important. What should we do with what Jesus has said? Well, we should listen to him, believe his word, share the good news with others like the disciples were sent out to do. And C, because of Jesus' power, what do we know about the promises that he has made to us? We know that he will keep all of them. He is both willing and able to keep his promises. It wouldn't do us much good if Jesus was willing to keep his promises. He really, really wanted to, but, well, he just wasn't powerful enough to carry it out. That wouldn't do us any good. It wouldn't do us any good if Jesus was powerful enough to do everything he said he was going to do. He had the power, but just he wasn't willing to do it, and so he didn't. That wouldn't be any good. But Jesus has both the power and the willingness to keep his promises to us, to do exactly what he has told us he will. Not much homework for this lesson, no memory work. The key questions for lesson 40, but otherwise that should do it for this lesson. If you have any questions, as always, please get in touch with me. Have a wonderful day and God's blessings to all of you.